Representative, good to see you again. Ken Paxton, the Attorney General, and the Department of Public Safety have had some conflicting remarks for a while here. First saying that this SB4 is only going to be enforced along the border with what the troopers can visually see. Then DPS comes out and says, oh, no, it's going to be enforced statewide like the law is written. Why is there so much confusion about how to enact this law if indeed the courts uphold it?
Well, I think DPS has recently come out and said what I've been saying all along, and that I believe that 95% or more of the enforcement of SB4 will occur within 50 miles of the border. And I think what they came out recently was saying exactly that. They want to rely on people that they actually observe, visually see, what we call an on-view offense, that they would see them cross illegally, and that would be on the border. So I think that's consistent with what I've said all along.
But it seems like DPS originally said, oh, no, it's only going to be along the border. But then they said, oh, but it's statewide, so we can do it anywhere. Yeah. I'm just trying to figure out, well, why isn't it a clear message? I mean, the law seems black and white in that regard.
Yeah, I can't answer that. It's a statewide law. It applies everywhere. But as I've said all along, that I think that you're going to have less enforcement the farther you get from the scene of the crime or the situs of where this occurs. And the nature of this for illegal entry is you're focusing on people actually crossing into our state from a foreign country. It's very difficult, if not sometimes impossible, to prove that unless you actually see or otherwise know where they crossed, when they crossed, how they crossed, who was with them, and be able to prove that. And so because of the nature of this, again, this is not what Arizona dealt with years ago. Completely different.
But so, was this one written too broadly? Do you think that's
I don't
part of the
think so.
courts?
And the reason is you're going to have instances, whether there be people involved in smuggling of persons or other things that may happen around the state, across the state, that you're going to actually have that information. And so we didn't want to tie law enforcement's hands. We didn't want to limit the enforcement to just number one, observation only, because there are other surveillance techniques that they're implementing in Operation Lone Star, and we didn't want to say it only happens only on the counties or enforced only on the counties on the border. So
the Fifth Circuit is famously conservative. That's why Texas likes going to the Fifth Circuit, but we're also in the Fifth Circuit. Right. But why do you think that the state is running into so many questions from these conservative judges about whether this law is constitutional?
Well, I think it's a landmark case. It's a very big case, and it's a departure from what states have typically gotten into. And I feel that we can, as I've said before, it's constitutional. I believe that we can do that. But I think it's kind of an idea of we want to, measure twice and cut once. We want to make sure that we're on the right track here if we rule in favor of this. And I respect that. I understand that.
If the courts say this is unconstitutional, will you go back next session in January and try to do something else with this law?
Well, we're going to try to do whatever we can to protect Texans, whatever that may be, and there may be other areas related to this that we get into. The other thing that's kind of been ignored here, what the district court judge did in Austin, was just basically says it's all unconstitutional, it's all preempted, it's all field preempted. But
there's federal precedent for that. I mean, there's plenty of court precedent for that. It's the federal government's job, right?
Well, yes and no. It doesn't say that in the Constitution, and we're allowed things. Generally, the presumption on the law, if you read the Arizona case, is that the presumption is against preemption, especially field preemption, where it says that you get into one particular area, and that's not what Arizona has said here. But the other issue that people are forgetting about is that there's a severability provision in SB4 that says, okay, even if the court finds that part of it is unconstitutional, the other remaining parts may be completely constitutional. So but what the court did, I think incorrectly, said it's all improper, and I don't think that that's the correct interpretation of the law.
Are you surprised the conservative Fifth Circuit is having so many questions over this law?
Not really. I mean, I listened to the argument the other day. All valid questions, all valid concerns, but you have to understand some of the questions that they had to do with the process and had to do with what came back from the Supreme Court and the limited scope of that particular hearing. We have a hearing scheduled coming up next Wednesday on the 3rd, and that's a different process entirely because we're looking at the injunction, and the burden of proof on that is on the Department of Justice and the other plaintiffs in the case, that the burden of proof on that is not on the state of Texas. So it's a different issue slightly, some of the same related issues, but it's slightly different process, and so you would have different questions, and that's on the merits of the injunction.
A lot of people have related this to the 2010 law from Arizona, the Show Me Your Papers law. This one's different because it mimics federal law. So the Supreme Court, though, struck down what happened in Arizona 14 years ago. It's a different Supreme Court now. It's a more conservative Supreme Court, as we all know. Do you expect when this eventually gets settled by the courts, and likely the Supreme Court, that the conservative majority there is going to rule in Texas's favor?
I think that SB4 is going to prevail. I think it will be held constitutional, and ultimately, I think the U.S. Supreme Court will make that ultimate decision at the end of it, because even if the Fifth Circuit rules in that favor, the DOJ is going to appeal. So I think ultimately it's a Supreme Court decision, but I think it's going to be ruled that way, not so much because we have a more conservative Supreme Court, but because we've stayed away from the problems and the issues that were a problem in the Arizona case. Again, SB4 was drafted to get away from those particular areas that were preempted. Yeah. We've stuck with the script. We've stuck with existing law, because what we have in SB4 is consistent with existing law. It's not preempted by federal law, and so I feel very good about it.
How long is this going to take legally to wind its way through the courts?
It may take a while, but I think the important thing is if we win the right to enforce it until there's ultimately a trial on the merits of the case. Right. So we may have something enforceable, and I believe that we can based on the basis legally for a temporary injunction, the things that the Department of Justice and others, the requirements that they had to meet, that in my opinion they have not met. And so I think that we'll have something temporarily enforceable until we have a final ruling.
Critics say that SB4, one thing it does is it ignores the rights of migrants seeking political asylum. They don't have to enter through a port of entry, as you know, but if they seek political asylum, that SB4 doesn't allow for that. If you see someone coming across, that Texas wouldn't consider political asylum. We don't have asylum courts.
Well, we're not saying that SB4 doesn't allow for it. We're saying that SB4 doesn't allow the defense of, oh, now I'm here, now I've been arrested, now I want to claim asylum. It doesn't work that way. If people want to claim asylum, they can do so. We're not stopping them from doing that. It just says that
But don't you take them back until they can go through that legal process?
Well, right now, they can be in Mexico and claim asylum on the CBP One app and do that. That's what they're doing right now when they want to claim that. They don't have to physically be present in the United States to do that. So anyone that wants to claim asylum, they can do that, but that's not what's happening. We have people coming across at other places other than a port of entry, and they're coming in mass. And you've seen the video even last week of what's going on, what happened in El Paso, and more and more and more we're getting more violence, more force, and the problem is we're having more dangerous people coming across, documented terrorists and other people that we don't know.
The way the law is written is if a police officer picks up somebody and a magistrate decides that they're not here lawfully, the state magistrate can send someone back to Mexico. Mexico doesn't want to accept these people. It's already said that.
Well, I really don't. Quite frankly, I don't really care what Mexico says or what they think.
But we can't force someone across the border there. I mean, we're trying to do the same thing here, keep people from coming across, right?
Well, I think we can do whatever we need to do, and I think that we will do whatever we need to do. And so we turn them back to a port of entry and order them back. And again, the magistrate doesn't just order them back. That's only if they agree to go back. So, but Mexico, that's somewhat disingenuous. That's a kind term to use it, for them to say, hey, wait a minute, we let all these people in from over 100 different countries at some other port or some other place in Mexico. Mexico had full knowledge of what's going on. They've acquiesced in this. They participated in this. They've allowed these people to come through their country knowing full well exactly what their intention is. They've allowed that to happen, allowed them to be processed, allowed them to get across the border into our state. For them to now come back and say, well, we don't want to accept them. That's crazy. I don't agree with that. And I don't know what President Biden would do. I know what President Trump would do. He'd say, well, we're not asking permission here. We're sending them back, period, end of story. I also would say this. Yeah. Just because the president of Mexico or someone in interior Mexico says we're not going to do it, doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Governor Abbott has existing MOUs, memorandums of understanding, with the 4 states that border Texas.
The Mexican states. Of course,
Yes,
Texas, yeah.
and we have a very good working relationship with them. They've cooperated with us. We have no reason to believe that they won't continue to cooperate with us in that respect. And so he has every legal right to do that. If those need to be tweaked or modified in some respect, I have full faith and confidence that Governor Abbott will do that.
If the courts uphold SB 4, you mentioned it's a landmark case. Wouldn't that open the door for other immigration functions for the state to pick up at taxpayer expense?
Well, a couple different questions there. There are other functions that we could do. I don't think that we want to get into immigration per se. Again, we're not determining immigration policy with SB 4. We're saying if you arrived here illegally, there's nothing unfair about asking you to go back home the same way you came if you got here illegally. And that's what SB 4 does. It says we're going to send people back. We're not dictating to the United States how they need to process people, what they need to do, how we allow naturalization and people become citizens and so forth. We're not getting into that as a state. That's not what SB 4 does. But do I think that there are other things that we can do? I think they can, as long as they're constitutional and they're preempted by, but they're not either field preempted or otherwise preempted by federal law.
Super Tuesday changed a lot in Texas. I would say, though some disagree, that the Republican Party of Texas has shifted further to the right. What do you expect the next legislative session to look like?
It'll be interesting. I'm not really sure what to expect, you know, but I will say this. The Texas House is the most deliberative body in our country. It's very unique and potentially of the world. And we have a very unique, it's a very unique place, and it operates very differently, much more so than what I realized before I got there. And so people can express their views, people can promote their causes, and I think that we're going to have a very interesting session, but hopefully we'll have people that come together and work, respectfully disagree about certain policy issues, but that we can get things done for the people of Texas. And that's what I'm committed to get good policy and good law for people in the state of Texas and for my district. And so that's what I will work toward. You have 150 members of the Texas House that want the same thing, and so hopefully we'll get that accomplished.
Representative, thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.